Hello, this is Ben, and today we're going to look at is the moral argument for God's existence circular reasoning. So circular reasoning is when you prove a point with the point you're trying to prove. For example, let's say someone tells you that he's never wrong, and then you ask him, why should I believe that? Why is it? Why should anyone agree with you? And he says, well, the reason I'm never wrong is because I'm always right. Okay, so that would be an example of circular reasoning. Now, the moral argument for God's existence is an argument for the existence of God, and some object to it and say that it does not prove the existence of God on the basis that it is circular reasoning. Now, if you want to make a truth claim, that is called a proposition. Proposition is a statement that declares some sort of truth, like Andy's feet stink, or John is tall, or something like that. Those are propositional statements, right? Because they claim to be true. A non-propositional statement would be something like, is John tall? Or I don't know if John is tall. Well, that would be a truth claim because you're claiming that you don't know. But you get the idea. Propositions put the burden on proof. The burden of proof is on the one making the proposition. So, if you claim that an argument is circular, then you are claiming knowledge. You are claiming to know a fact. Therefore, it is the duty of the one who claims to know the fact to prove the fact. If you cannot prove the fact, then we must say that we have no idea if your fact is true or not. So, for example, if I claim to you that Bigfoot exists, I'm drawing about the worst Bigfoot ever, and he has big feet, right? If I claim to you that Bigfoot exists, look at that terrible drawing. Bigfoot exists, okay? If I can't give you any evidence or any reason to believe that Bigfoot exists, then there's no reason why you should believe that Bigfoot exists. Now, let's say I claim to prove to you that God exists. That, God exists. It is my job to prove to you that God exists because I'm the one who claims a fact, who makes a proposition. The burden of proof is on the person claiming the fact. So if you claim knowledge, like your moral argument for God's existence is circular, then it is up to you to prove it. Now, if you are going to prove it, you need to prove it in the terms that the argument is made, because I can take anything anyone says and alter it in such a way so that I can make it look circular, or I can make it look like anything if I alter it enough. So it's very tempting sometimes when you're in an argument to take the opponent's position and just redefine and change their position to something that you would prefer to be debating against instead of their actual position. And so, you don't want to do that. You don't want to defeat someone who doesn't exist. You want to defeat the actual positions. But here's the thing. The moral argument for God's existence has basically 2 points. And the problem with saying that they're circular is that they're not circular. So, one is the is, well, we won't even say is-ought distinction. We'll say moral propositions are only generated by personal beings. And okay, so that's one that we started with, number 2. And then moral propositions are true. Now, this is basically the nuts and bolts of the moral argument for God's existence. So when we say moral propositions are true, when we say moral, what we mean is that, let's say, for example, someone says it's wrong to ever murder a 6-year-old girl. That is evil. That you should not do that. Okay, that is a moral proposition. That is a truth claim about morality, that it is truly wrong to do that. That is the truth. Okay. So moral propositions are true, or you might say morality exists is another way people might put it. All right, so how do we know that this is true? This is based on sense experience. Okay, in other words, we all experience this as a sensation in the same way that you see the screen that you're looking at, in the same way that you smell delicious chocolate chip cookies, in the same way that you hear the alarm clock go off in the morning. You sense them with your sense experience. We also have a moral sense, a sort of fifth sense, really. And we sense that it's not a sense about the way the world is, it's a sense about the way the world should be. Okay, the moral sense is about the way the world should be. If someone wants to doubt the moral sense, then they're going to have to doubt all of their other sense experiences. In my experience, atheists, they don't doubt the sense experience of morality. They're fine with that. They understand the everyday life or existential problem of living life like there's no such thing as right and wrong. They get it. They get that it's wrong to kill people and murder people, and they know that. And they're not going to sit there and smile in your face and tell you anything else. They get it. And according to the moral argument for God's existence, that is one of the premises in the argument. That an atheist or anyone has a sense experience of the way the world should be. We sense it in the same way that we see things. So that's not really up for so much debate. But there's a second point. Moral propositions are only generated by personal beings. And this is based on David Hume's is-ought distinction. And what he's saying there is that there is a difference between statements or propositions about the way the world is and propositions about the way the world ought to be or the way the world should be. In other words, if I say to you, there are 5 cars in my driveway, that is a is statement about the way the world is. If I say it is bad that there are 5 cars in my driveway, that's an ought statement. That's a statement about the way the world ought to be. So how do you know this to be true? And how do you know that they're only generated by personal beings? Well, an ought statement is about intention, purpose, desire. Okay? In other words, when we say a personal being, we mean, not a thing. A thing is either personal or it's not personal. And if it's not personal, it's just sort of an entity, just like a rock or some sort of thing that just exists. But as soon as it's a personal being, then we mean that it has intention, purpose, thought, desire about the way the world ought to be. So in other words, this second point is true by what in math we would say, hopefully you can see this part, by definition. In other words, it is the very definition of a personal being to have intention, desire, purpose about the way the world should be, about the way things ought to be. So the reason this is true is by definition. In other words, moral propositions are a property of personal beings and only personal beings, because essentially personal beings are the only type of entity that can generate moral propositions. And we know this to be true by the definition of what they are. We're not looking for evidence for that. It's just inherent in what it means to be a personal being. Only personal beings can generate moral propositions, because personal beings are the only thing that can generate intention, purpose, and desire. And the only options are personal beings or non-personal entities. A personal entity or a non-personal entity. And non-personal entities, if they have intention, purpose, and desire, then that raises serious questions about what you mean by non-personal, about just entities that are just its or just things. I mean, if they have those qualities, then what exactly distinguishes them from personal beings? When we say that personal beings are the only ones that have intention, purpose, and desire, we're just simply stating the definition of what a personal being is. Okay? So, again, we're not playing games with the definitions. A thing is either personal or not personal. So, moral propositions are only generated by personal beings. So this is not a circular argument for the existence of God. This first point is generated by sense experience, completely independent of the second point. The second point is true by definition of what a personal being is. So, since what this means is any sense experience you have, or really, you don't even have to have the sense experience. If there's just a proposition, you know, Sally was bad, that statement cannot be generated without a personal being to generate it. Okay? And personal beings are what generate these things. Okay? So, the next question we would have to ask if we want to move forward to the existence of God is simply, is it absolute? Is morality absolute? In other words, let's say, for example, the Nazis succeeded in exterminating and brainwashing everyone who disagreed with them. If they were to do that, then everyone would believe that it's a good idea to be a Nazi and to be a super racist Nazi. Would it still be wrong to be a super racist Nazi? Most of us would say an emphatic yes, that what they do is evil, and we base that on our sense experience of morality. Sense experience. So, that means that our sense experience tells us that there is an absolute morality, regardless of if anyone likes it. Because, you know, as soon as you say Sally was bad, you are appealing to some sort of standard by which it doesn't matter if Sally agrees with you or not. Or it doesn't matter what Sally thinks, and it doesn't really matter what you think. You're saying Sally is bad in reality. It is the truth that Sally is bad. Okay? You're making a moral proposition. And so there has to be an absolute authority or an absolute moral lawgiver to generate such moral laws. God. So the moral argument for God's existence depends on two premises which are independent. One is true by definition of just what it means to be a personal being, and the other was true by sense experience. So we don't know morality exists because God created it. No, we know morality exists because of the sense experience. So it's not that this proves this and this proves this. Rather, this is true independently by itself because of a sense experience. And then we know by definition that that could not exist unless there was some sort of personal being to generate it. And so therefore the existence of this leads us to conclude that there must be a God. In other words, if you find a man laying on the ground with a bullet hole in his head, you would say somebody shot him or something happened to this man, you know. You would postulate some sort of, well, what types of things could cause that to happen? You know, what types of entities, what types of events could cause that to happen? You would narrow it down to some sort of list of options, okay, that could cause what you have observed. All right, so in other words, we observe an event, or we observe some sort of something in reality, and then we say there's only a certain set of options that could cause that. So the moral argument for God's existence works like that. And it's not circular. This is true and real on its own, and then logically speaking, there are only a certain list of options that could cause that. And then from that we deduce. So this is a deductive argument, not a circular argument. It's deductive. Because these two are true, we deduce outside of that. In other words, we're dividing, well, if these two are true, then other things have to be true. Logically, that God exists. Deductively. Hope this video made sense. Thank you for your time.